fusion monsters. Who doesn't love these purple guys? From Gaia the Dragon Champion to Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon to Sandwich, these guys were iconic. And as with anything iconic in Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's been given support in Duel Links in the form of skills. And considering that Yuri, a very fusion-centric character, released last week, there is no better time than now to cover some of them. Well, here's a simple skill, Fusion Restock. This skill is only available to Arc 5 characters that originate from the Fusion dimension. Once per duel, you can simply place a Fusion or Polymerization spell from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. This is a skill that is meant to set up your Fusion cards to be searched by effects like those of Edge and Patchwork. Not much to say about this, sometimes skills are just not that useful. But if instead of recurring your Fusion cards for later, what if you want to Fusion summon now? Well, then you'd better be a master of Fusion, just like Sherry, Cyrus, Zuzu, and some other characters. If your life points have decreased by at least 1,000, you can return one card in your hand into the deck and then generate a copy of Polymerization in your hand. This is pretty nice, especially since it's not dependent on your draw for turn, can return potential bricks into your deck, and it was added pretty early on, so it can be used in slower formats like those of Legacy duels. However, most fusion-based decks have more dedicated skills or in-deck methods to get to their fusion cards, but maybe try it in decks like Dark Lord, which don't have a decent fusion card. Wait, they got an archive skill? Maybe try using that one instead. And of course, what would a fusion party be without the squad from the Fusion show, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX? Cyrus has Fusion Reserves Roids, which can be used once you have taken at least 1,500 points of damage. Up to twice per duel, you can add any fusion material that is specifically named on a Roid fusion monster in your extra deck. This can search stuff like Steamroid, Gyroid, Drillroid, Submarine Roid, and because of name shenanigans, Elemental Hero Wildheart. I don't believe this has had any competitive relevance since the only Roid that is consistently played isn't named fusion material, but this certainly seems like a fun tool to mess around with in Legacy duels. What, you don't like Cyrus? You want to chaz it up instead? Okay, then have Dragonic Fusion, which adds 5-headed dragon and Dragon's Mirror to your deck at the start of the duel. Additionally, once your life points have been decreased by at least 1,500, you can return a card in your hand back into the deck to replace it with a copy of Dragon's Mirror from your deck. Dragon's Mirror is a Miracle Fusion for Dragon Fusion monsters, which is pretty cool if you want to tech some Fusion into your Dragon deck, and you don't even have to use the Mirror on 5-headed, you could use it on any other Dragon Fusion like Red Eyes / Dragon. It even gives the opportunity for an incredibly anime comeback moment by summoning a 5,000 attack dragon using only material from your graveyard in a clutch moment, which is very cool. And now for the stars of the show, the duelists with the power of ultimate fusion, Jaden and Yuri. Oh, and this edgelord who has his own character slot for reasons. As a weird trend for this episode, you first have to take 1,500 points of damage. Then, on your next turn, you can replace whatever card you were going to draw with a copy of Super Polymerization from outside of your deck. That's right, Super Polymerization. This is a lot slower and less of a comeback tool than Dragonic Fusion is, even though we do now have Starving Venom, but it's a lot cooler in the style department because, come on, it's Super Polymerization. And it even has a really cool tie between Jaden and Yuri, the only people to... Wait, what? Yuri doesn't have the Super Poly skill? This game is literally unplayable. Now we're about to go full tilt into the Yuri show, but before we do, remember to click all the YouTube buttons. Okay, let's go! When I say the Yuri show, I mean that all of these are skills that came out with Yuri's launch. Other characters may also have them, but Yuri is going to have all of them. Out of these, Precious Cards of the Dark is the only one that is not strictly fusion related. It allows you to return a card in your hand back to the bottom of the deck, then draw a new card. You can even do this twice per duel, so you can retry a clutch draw later in the game if it goes bad. Since the requirements are that your deck has at least 9 dark monsters, and the skill is available to a wide pool of characters, this seems pretty useful for decks that want to keep a specific card in their deck at all times. Orcus probably really likes this to help smooth out their combos, but since this skill is new and I don't fully understand how that deck plays, I will leave the explanations there. LP boost Fusion level 8 is likewise widely distributed across the cast, though it is both less useful and more Fusion specific. If your extra deck has at least 2 Fusion monsters that are level 8 or lower, you start the duel with 1,600 more life points. Additionally, if you summon one of those Fusion monsters during a turn, you will gain 400 more life points during the end of that turn. This does a whole lot of nothing unless you are on a Row Mage, which does have a fusion, but that hasn't come to Duel Links yet. I will say, keep this in mind, but the next skill is way better even if that fusion does come out. Fusion Dark Rays has almost the exact same character distribution and first effect, giving you 1,500 more life points at the start of the duel if you have at least one Dark Fusion monster in your extra deck. Instead of a life point increase at the end of a turn, it can give a monster on your field a 300 to 800 attack point bonus, depending on if you have a Dark and/or Fusion monster on the field or in your graveyard. That's not an insignificant stat increase with how small the starting life point total is in Duel Links, so this could definitely come in handy, especially since a Link version of this skill is currently seeing use with Sky Striker, so if that aforementioned Row Mage fusion ever comes out, definitely try this. But enough of all this sharing and generic fusion skills, it's time for the real funny stuff. These final 2 skills for today are purely support for Yuri's signature Predaplant deck. Now, I'm not going to go in depth on how the deck itself plays. Instead, I will direct you to a video that covers exactly that by one Golden Nova Yu-Gi-Oh! Say hi while you're there. What I will instead do, however, is take you to the Predator dimension. This skill prevents you from special summoning anything that starts in your main deck except for Predaplants, and stops you from normal summoning anything but plants in general. The first lets you swap a Predaplant in your hand with one in your deck, perfect for setting up that Darlingtonia Cobra summon. The second lets you return any number of monsters in your graveyard back into your deck, then create a copy of either Polymerization or Preda Pruning in your hand. And as it's specifically called out, Preda Pruning is an equip spell that can special summon any Predaplant from your graveyard upon activation. You can use these effects twice in a duel, while most skills can only do their thing once, but unless you want to be silly and summon Clearwing, I would leave the Predator dimension immediately, since the other skill locks out all other tuners except Banksy Ogre, a card we do not have. Do remember to check out the Duel Academy gift shop on your way out, though. That other skill is Starving Venom Invasion, which needs you to have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon in your extra deck and completely locks your summons to Predaplants, unless you're a monster with a special border color. By revealing 2 Predap or Fusion cards in your hand, another Predap card is added from your deck to your hand. Then, a copy of regular Polymerization is generated, also in your hand. So 2 free cards, in a Fusion deck that can replace its cards really easy. Not to mention, it gives instant access to a Fusion effect, which means you don't have to run a bunch of bricky Fusion spells. But to make things even better, this skill has a crazy ability going second. If only your opponent controls a monster, you can place a Predator counter on that opponent's monsters. And if you aren't panicking upon hearing that, you haven't read like half the Predaplant cards. Drosophilum Hydra becomes a kaiju, but it goes to your field. Chlamydia Sundew is Bargain Bin Super Poly, and so much else. This is the skill for Predaplants. In fact, this skill is so good, I used it to get to King of Games on the last ranked session. It's that good. Now you all go have fun mashing your monsters together into chimeric monstrosities with these abilities. I know I certainly will be. Until later, see ya! Bye!